This, my friends, is Panasonic's Lumix S9. Let's take a look. So you're probably thinking, what the hell is Lumix? It sounds like an erectile dysfunction drug whose spokesperson is Lou Ferrigno. This is YouTube, man. We want to watch a couple dozen videos of people regurgitating the exact same talking points about the latest cameras from Sony or Canon. Hey, I get it. I've used plenty of Sony and Canon cameras over the years, both personally and professionally. I've got a couple Sony bodies here today, and they're absolutely aces. I swear I'm not a Lumix zealot. There's just something about their cameras that are so endearing to me. You just want to pinch their little cheeks. And I've been a fan since way back in the good old days of the GH3. Now I understand if the consumer camera market is King Denethor, then Sony is obviously Boromir, and Lumix is Faramir. Sure, Lumix might not have the same combat acumen or ability to inspire the hearts and minds of its fellow Gondorians, but it's no slouch in those areas either. And at least in my opinion, more than makes up for it with a scholar's understanding of lore and a humble, even-keeled disposition. And who among us doesn't like rooting for the underdog? So if all publicity is good publicity, then Lumix must be thrilled with the launch of this camera. There was a little bit of an internet dust-up surrounding some of its more negative aspects, which was compounded by some controversy about the transactional nature between manufacturers and YouTube reviewers. Now that the dust has settled, I think we can look at this camera a bit more objectively. But to hell with all that and let us tarry no further. What has my experience with the S9 been like so far? I fucking love this little thing. So the idea of taking a popular piece of tech and simply making it smaller isn't new to the camera space. Sony's been on that grind for years now. This A7C II is essentially the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids version of the A7 IV. The ZV-E1 is the small boy version of the A7S III, and so on. I personally love this trend, but just like selling your soul to Satan, it always comes at a cost. Given that the S9 is, at least in many ways, a pruned-back S5 II, that cost in this case is active cooling, an electronic viewfinder, a mechanical shutter, redundant storage, and some button and dial robustness. But just look at how small and adorable this thing is.
Just look at it! Just look at it!
Here's a quick size comparison to the A7C II. And the ZV-E1. Here it is with the small rig base plate. It gives you this added grip on the front right side. Not absolutely necessary, but it does make the camera a lot more comfortable and secure to hold one-handed. And here's the full small rig cage. I really like this cage. I will say that not all camera cages are created equally, even ones from the same manufacturer. So I really like the design of this one. It doesn't get in the way a lot like some cages do, and I think it lends itself well to kind of the retro vibe they're going for with this camera. Now it's still a full frame camera, so I wouldn't exactly call it pocketable, unless you're wearing a comically oversized coat. But having the glorious 6K sensor from the S5 II, such a compact body, just kind of feels like a cheat code. I went to see the band Dawes recently here in Minneapolis, and before the show I jumped on the venue's website to check out their camera policy, which very clearly stated no interchangeable lens cameras allowed. I wanted to see just how discreet the S9 might be out in the real world, so I installed the included neck strap, charged headlong into the belly of the beast, and much to my delight, security didn't even bat an eye when I walked by with this thing around my neck. I think that's an element of the magic of this camera, and others like it that people tend to overlook. At least to the untrained eye, it kind of just looks like a casual point-and-shoot camera. Definite wolf in sheep's clothing vibes. I think an interchangeable lens camera that's this small only really makes sense when you have compact lenses to pair with it. Lumix has a bunch of great lenses in their S Prime series that are all around the same size, and I think they pair very well with this camera. I have a handful of them, and I especially love using the 100mm macro with the S9. Having that much reach and lovely compression in a package this size is just amazing. But the real match made in heaven, in my opinion, is the Sigma 45mm 2.8. It's tiny, the build quality is spectacular, and it really lends to that vintage vibe. This lens lives on my S9 the lion's share of the time, and it makes for the ultimate grab-and-go setup for when my dog does something that's so impossibly cute, I wouldn't dare disgrace the moment by trying to capture it with a smartphone camera. So I think Lumix absolutely nailed the form factor and vibes of this camera. But none of that really matters if the photos and video that come out of it are garbage. I'm happy to report they are not. Probably unsurprisingly, they look pretty much exactly the same as the S5 II, which in this case is a very, very good thing. Now, I'm a far cry from a professional stills photographer, but I will say that the S9 is my favorite camera in recent years to pretend with. I've already captured shots with this thing that are among my favorite I've ever taken. Shots that I simply wouldn't have got with my S5 IIX. Not because it isn't a capable stills camera, it absolutely is, but because it usually looks like this. Not exactly the most conducive to grab when you're walking out the door or take with on a casual dog walk. That is far and away my favorite thing about the S9 so far. It's just a camera that's always ready to rip. It's a joy to use and a joy to bring with you. Now don't get it twisted, okay? I still also adore my S5 IIX. Though they share a sensor, these cameras really couldn't be more different from each other. For the client work that I do, the S5 IIX is basically the perfect workhorse camera. The results are amazing, and I never have to spend time or energy worrying about shortcomings or if it can get the job done. At least for me and what I need, this isn't going to be replacing this. I could see a scenario in which this was your only or primary camera, especially if some of the rumors are true. Rumors that I should say are totally unsubstantiated, that they might remove the draconian record limits via firmware. I haven't noticed this thing getting particularly toasty during my use, so I feel like at the very least they could loosen them up a little bit. But for me, it's just a match made in heaven as a complimentary little brother to my workhorse S5 IIX. I feel like the #1 with a bullet objective of the design team at Lumix was to remove as many barriers as possible with this camera. And I personally am so glad that they did. Because if there's anything I'm worse at than taking photographs, it's editing them. I honestly thought the LUT button and the built-in LUT functionality was a gimmick that I was gonna hate when I ordered this camera. I thought I would just ignore it. Who needs Instagram filters built into your camera? But I absolutely love it, and I wish every camera had this feature. Before the S9, my photo production workflow went something like this. Go out into the field, take some cool or interesting raw photos, think about all the exotic ways I was gonna edit and style them once I get back to Lightroom Classic, indulge myself with thoughts of the deluge of accolades and hell, maybe even prestigious awards I would receive once the world saw these photos. Get home, put the SD card in the reader, launch Valheim or Overwatch, and never look at or think of these photos ever again. Now, a version of that still happens with the S9, but thanks to the genuinely gorgeous LUTs, I have some very nice looking photos that I can send with little to no effort. Lumix Lab is probably the best phone companion app I've ever used from a camera manufacturer. Blackmagic is also really good, but the UX is beautiful. They've clearly put a lot of thought into it. It feels modern. It still stubbornly refuses to connect to my phone sometimes, like every single camera app I've ever used, which can be frustrating. But once you're in, it is a delight. So I think like pretty much any product, whether or not you should buy this one, just depends almost entirely on what you plan to use it for. Thinking about starting a YouTube channel, maybe a photo video side hustle, or even a full-blown production business. Jesus Christ, don't buy this thing. Just get the S5 II, hands down. It's a camera that was designed for workloads like that. This thing has got a completely different skill set. And I think we need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that every full frame camera that comes out needs to be everything to everyone, or else it's trash. So I think the S5 II is a borderline miracle. The versatility, the value, I've just loved using this thing. But as much as I revere this camera, the S9 just hits different, man. I've seen people call it an everyday cam, a dad cam, a casual cam, whatever you want to call it. I've pretty much picked this thing up and used it every single day since I bought it. And that's something I can't say for any other camera I've owned. Sure, it can't be everything to everyone, but if you're looking for something that was designed to be a bit more fun, or if, like me, you've already got a workhorse camera and want a compact sidekick to complement it, I can wholeheartedly recommend this little ripper. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Let's go, girl.